All right. This is animal behaviors that aid in survivorship. And now it's not turning. Okay. My name is Elisa, and I'll be doing the introduction of articles and article summary.
My name is Madeline, and I will be doing the analysis and critical stance.
My name is Bobby, and I'll be doing evidence of convincing arguments.
My name is Selena, and I'll be doing the article's contribution of the field and the reflection.
Animal behavior is essential for survivorship, influences how species respond to threats and find resources, and adapt to changing environments. In this presentation, there are three articles that talk about three different species, each having unique ways of surviving. Article 1 talks about how risk-taking and physical growth of animals, such as the bighorn sheep, can affect survival. It shows that big, bold animals, even though they may grow fast and have strong physical features, they can still face dangers to hunters. Article 2 focuses on the buffalo and how they use group cooperations to find food and stay safe from predators of all kinds. This study highlights how teamwork and migration are key survival strategies in the wild. Article 3 looks at small mammals such as the bank voles and their cognitive characteristics and how it can affect the search of food goes in their habitat. Article 1 this study looks at the wild bighorn sheep and how their behavior affects their chances of survival. The researchers wanted to see if being bold or cautious made a difference. The cautious ones used the steep rocky terrain to escape their predators, while the bold ones, while still bold, they would adjust how bold they would be given the different type of predators that they have to face. They measured this by seeing how often a sheep was trapped. They saw that the bold sheep got caught more because they took more risks. They also looked at their horn growth and what they do with it, and found that they use it to compete for dominance through horn clashes. For this experiment, the researchers concluded that the sheep that grow faster, acted bolder, could aid for survivorship, although could also impact its survival by being targeted from more hunters. Article 2. This study focuses on the African buffalo and how their group behavior style helps them survive in the wild. Researchers examine how the herds move to find food and avoid predators together, and what they discovered was that the buffalo depended on the teamwork and leadership to thrive and survive their challenging habitat. They stated that their cooperation and coordination benefits them more than just their individual size and strength. The herd works collectively to locate their food and water sources, which is often guided by what looked like an older, wiser buffalo. by staying in their large groups, it offers them strong protection from the predators. One way that they saw how they stay together and maintain is forming, like you see in the picture, it's forming a circle around the younger calves when they face danger. This article showed us that maintaining that strong social bond allowed the buffalo to communicate and make group decisions, all which aid in their survivorship. Article 3. This article explores the bank voles and how their thinking abilities and decision-making styles affect its survival. Researchers studied how voles use learning, memory, and problem solving to find food and avoid predators. They found that the voles show clear cognitive differences. For example, some are more curious and willing to explore new spaces, while others are more cautious and rely on observing before acting. The exploratory voles often find food faster and learn new routes quickly, but their confidence also comes with a con. which was exposing them to easier danger. Meanwhile, the cautious wolves use memory and awareness of safe paths to stay protected, although they also have a con which they're not able to find as much food because they're more cautious. Overall, the study shows that these mental skills help them survive their habitat.
For bighorn sheep, most early life mortality happened during the winter months due to lack of resources. However, bighorns that survived to at least 6 years old were discovered to be greater risk takers. The study found that bighorns who grew faster and took greater risk for resources survived longer than bighorns that did not. Although these risk taker individuals were able to survive the winter months, they were more likely to be killed by hunters. Despite this downside to their risky behaviors, the study gave strong evidence that overall, the riskier the bighorn, the better its chances of survival. In Article 2, African buffalo utilize their numbers rather than just their strength for the greater survivability of the herd rather than just as individuals. Matriarchal leaders guide the groups towards resources during migrations, and the herd communicates to each other through vocalizations and body language in order to alert the entire group of predators so that they can work together to defend the herd. In Article 3, a variety of cognitive styles allow bank voles to essentially read the room when it comes to risk taking. When there is cover available to protect the vole from avian predators, the vole will take more risks for resources. The study set up differing scenarios for 21 voles to respond in order to reach a food source. The experiment broke the voles into two categories: 18 shy and slow voles and 3 quick and bold voles. The results found a more positive correlation between the quick and bold voles and the acquisition of food sources. Some pros of Article 1 was that there was supportive evidence of conclusion, useful analysis of favorable characteristics, for example, risk-taking and horn size. However, there were some cons that came with this article as well, including wildfires or diseases, which are factors that were not measured in this experiment. For Article 2, the article excels in featuring several examples of survival tactics that African buffalo utilize. More information on the differing social dynamics of African buffalo would be helpful, as there are differing species and social dynamics that are crucial in group leadership for African buffalo that were not represented in the article. For Article 3, they observed several characteristics, for example, speed and vigilance. However, there were unequal testing groups. For example, only 3 in bold and quick voles and 18 shy and slow voles, which, if the groups were even, it may be likely that not all of the bold and quick voles reached the food source.
All right, so in this section, I'm going to explain how scientific evidence supports our main claim that animal behavior directly enhances survivorship by improving predator avoidance, resource gathering, and their reproductive fitness. So across all 3 of these studies, we saw a consistent pattern that the behavioral traits, whether it's physical, social, or cognitive, translated into higher survival outcomes. In the first study on bighorn sheep, researchers found that differences in vigilance and foraging behavior influenced how vulnerable individuals were to the cougar predation. The sheep that balanced foraging with their awareness grew more steadily and had better survival rates. And next, in the buffalo study, leadership and coordinated movement were key. Herds that showed stronger group cohesion and shared vigilance had significantly fewer predation events. This demonstrates that collective behavior enhances survival chances. And finally, in the cognitive flexibility study, with the voles, individuals that explored new environments and adapted their strategies were more likely to survive under unpredictable outcomes and conditions. And this shows that learning and decision making are just as vital as instinct. So together, these studies reveal that behavior, whether individual, social, or cognitive, is not just random, but shaped over time through evolution. So in this next slide, we can see the actual measurable outcomes from each study that make our argument convincing. So as we can see in the bighorn sheep research, individuals with faster early growth but lower vigilance faced higher predation rates. That shows a behavioral trade-off between resource gathering and their safety. And for the buffalo group, the movement data indicated that herds with defined leaders and tighter social structures experienced fewer attacks. This was a direct link between social coordination and survival. And for the cognitive flexibility study, lastly, the survival analysis revealed that those exhibiting greater cognitive flexibility and boldness adapted more efficiently to changes in food sources and habitat, which led to increase in survival probabilities among that population. So what's really powerful here is that all three of these studies, although they are different in species and environment, point towards the same conclusion that adaptive behavior consistently predicted survival success. So this collective evidence shows that the behavioral traits from vigilance and cooperation to learning and innovation are among the most reliable indicators of survivorship in the natural world. So now I'll pass it on to Selena.
Okay, so these studies really help us to understand how animal behaviors play a big role in survival. They show the way animals act, like how cautious they are, how they find food, or how they interact with others. It can actually affect how they survive and reproduce. For example, the first study points out that traits such as growth rate and risk-taking behavior, which can make some animals' personalities and thinking styles different, like being bold versus being careful, impact the choices they make between finding food and avoiding predators, which directly affects their chances of survival. The third study highlights how social connections and group behavior can influence health and lifespan, showing that having a strong social relationships help reduce stress and improve survival. Altogether, these studies show that behavior, intelligence, and social bonds all work together to help both animals and human survival better in their environments. And then on the next slide, just reflecting on these studies, it's clear that behavior plays a much bigger role in survival than we often realize. It's not just about physical traits or instincts. An animal's choices, personality, and social connections all influence how well it adapts to challenges in its environment. It can find, I find it fascinating how behaviors like risk-taking, learning, and forming social bonds can determine whether an individual thrives or struggles. It also makes me think about how humans impact these natural behaviors through things like hunting or habitat changes. Overall, these studies remind us that survival is a complex mix of biology, behavior, and environment, and understanding that connection helps us appreciate the delicate balance of life in the wild. And then our next slide is just all of the references that we used.